Chapter 12. The Triwizardian Tournament. Through the gates flanked with statues of wicked boar and up the sweeping drive, carriage turned, swaying dangerously in what was fast becoming a gale. Leaning against the window, Harry could see Hogwarts coming nearer. Its maybe lightened windows blurred and shimmering behind the thick curtain of rain. Lightning flashed across the sky as their carriage came to a halt before great oak front doors, which stood at the one of flight of stone steps. People who had occupied a carriage in front were already hurrying up. The stones swept into the castle. Harry, Ron, Hermione, and Neville jumped down from their carriage and dashed up the steps too, looking up only when they were safely inside the cavernous, torch-lit entrance hall. With its magnificent marble staircase, "Blimey," said Ron, shaking his head and sending water everywhere. "If that keeps up, the lake's going to overflow. I'm soaked. Ah!" A large red water-filled balloon had dropped from out of the ceiling into Ron's head and exploded. Drenched and sputtering, Ron staggered sideways into Harry just as the second water dump dropped, narrowly missing Hermione. It burst at Harry's feet, sending a wave of cold water over his sneaker into his socks. People all around them shrinking and started pushing one another into their efforts to get out of the line of fire. Harry looked up and saw 40 feet above them Hughes, the poltergeist, a little man in a bill-covered hat and orange bow tie, his wide malicious face contorted with concentration as he looked at him. "Hughes," yelled an angry voice. "Hugh, come down here at once." Professor McGonagall, deputy headmistress and head of Gryffindor's house, had come dashing out of the great hall. She skidding on the wet floor and grabbed Hermione around the neck to stop herself from falling. "Ouch! Sorry, Miss Granger." "That's all right, Professor," Hermione gasped, massaging her throat. "Just get down here now," barked Professor McGonagall, straightening her pointed hat and glaring upward through her square-rimmed spectacles. "Not doing nothing," crackled Pius, letting a water bomb at several fifth-year girls who screamed and dived into the great hall. "Already wet, aren't they, little squirts? Hey!" And he aimed another bomb at the group of second year who had just arrived. "I shall call the headmaster," shouted Professor McGonagall. "I'm warning you, Pius." Pius stuck out his tongue, threw the last of his water bomb into the air and zoomed off up a marble staircase, cracking insanely. "Well, move along then," said Professor McGonagall sharply to the red-dragged crowd into the great hall. "Come on." Harry, Ron, and Hermione slipped the slide across the entrance hall and through the double door on the right, Ron muttering furiously under his breath as he pushed his sloping hair off his face. The great hall looked its usual splendid self, decorated for the start of term feast. Golden plates and goblet gleam by the light of hundreds and hundreds of candles. Floating over the table in midair, the four log house tables were packed with chattering students. At the top of the hall, the staff sat along one side of fifth table, facing their pupil. It was much warmer in here. Harry, Ron, and Hermione walked past the Slytherins, the Ravenclaws, and the Hufflepuff, and sat down with the rest of the Gryffindors at the far side of the hall, next to nearly headless Nick, the Gryffindor ghost. Purely white and semi-transparent Nick was dressed tonight in this usual doublet, but with a particular large ruff which served the dual purpose of looking extra festive and ensuring that his head didn't wobble too much on his partially shaved neck. Good evening, he said, beaming at them. Says who? Said Harry, taking off his knicker and emptying them of water. Hope they hurry up with the sorting. I'm starving. The sorting of the new student into houses took place at the start of very school year, but by the unlucky combination of circumstances, Harry didn't been present at one since his own. He was quite looking forward to it. Just then, a highly excited, breathless voice called down the table. Yeah, Harry. It was Colin Creevy, a third year, to whom Harry was sometimes of a hero. Hi, Colin, said Harry wearily. Harry, guess what? Guess what, Harry? My brother's starting. My brother Dennis. Good, said Harry. He really excited. And Colin practically bounced up and said in his seat, I just hope he is in Gryffindor. Keep your finger crossed, yeah, Harry? Yes. All right, said Harry. He turned back to Hermione, Ron, and nearly headless Nick. Brother and sister usually go in the same houses, don't they? He said he was judging by the Weasleys, all seven of whom had been put into Gryffindors. Oh no, not necessarily, said Hermione. Parvati Patil's twin in clothes and they identical. You'd think they'd be together, wouldn't you? I looked up at the staff table. There seemed to be rather more empty seats rather than usual. Hagrid, of course, was still fighting his way across the lake with the first year. Professor McGonagall was presumably supervising the drying of the entrance hall floor, but there was another empty chair too, and Harry couldn't think who else was missing. That is the new defense against the dark art teacher, said Hermione, who was also looking up at the teachers. They had never yet had a defense against the dark art teacher who had lasted more than 3 terms. Harry's favorite by far had been Professor Lupin, who had resigned last year. He looked up and down the staff table. There was definitely no new face there. Maybe they could get anyone, said Hermione, looking anxious. Harry scanned the table more carefully. Tidy little Professor Flitwick, the charm teacher, was sitting on a large pile of caution beside Professor Sprout, the herbology teacher, whose hat was askew over her grey hair. She was talking to Professor Sanistra of the astronomy department of Professor Sanistra. Other side was the Swallow Force, Hooked Rose, greasy-haired Ocean Master, Snip, Harry's least favorite person at Hogwarts. Harry's looting of shape was matched only by shapes hatred of him. A hatred which had, if possible, intensified last year when Harry had helped Cyrus escape right under Snape's overlord's nose. Snape and Cyrus had been enemies since their own school days. On Snape's other side was an empty seat where Harry guessed was Professor McGonagall. Next to it, and it is very center of the table, sat Professor Dumbledore, the headmaster, his sweeping silver hair and beard shining in the table candlelight. The magnificent deep green robe, embroidered with many stars and moons, the tips of Dumbledore's long, thin fingers were together and he was resting his chin upon them, staring up at the ceiling through the half-moon spectacle as though lost in thought. Harry glanced up at the ceiling too. It was enchanted to look like the sky outside, and he had never seen it look this stormy. Black and purple clouds were swirling across it. And as another thunderclap sounded outside, a fork of lightning flashed across it. Oh, hurry up, Ron moaned beside Harry. I couldn't eat a hippogriff. The words were no sooner out of his mouth than the door of the great hall opened and silence fell. Professor McGonagall was leading a long line of first year up to the top of the hall. If Harry, Ron and Hermione were wet, it was nothing to how this first year looked. They appeared to have some across the table rather than silk. All of them were shivering with a combination of cold and nerves as they filed along the staff table and came to the halt in a line facing the rest of the school. All of them except the smallest of the lot, a boy with a mosey hair, who was wrapped in what Harry recognized as Hagrid's moleskin overcoat. The coat was so big for him that it looked as though he were wrapped in a furry black circus tent. His small face protruded from over the collar, looking almost painful, excited. When he had lined up with his terrified-looking peer, he caught Colin Gravy's eye, gave a double thumbs up, and mounted I fell in the lake. He looked positively delighted about it. Professor McGonagall now placed a three-legged stool on the ground before the first year, and on the top of it an extremely old, dirty, patched wizard's hat. The first year started at it, so did everyone else. For a moment there was a silence, then a long tear near the brim opened wide like a mouth, and the hat broke into a song. Thousands of years more ago, when I was nearly 7, there lived 4 wizards of renown, whose names are still well known. Bold Gryffindor from Wildmoor, fair Ravenclaw from Gleam, sweet Hufflepuff from Valleyford, shrewd Slytherin from the Fane. The great hall rang with applause as the Sorting Hat finished. That's not the song it sang when it sorted us, said Harry, clapping along with everyone else. Sings a different one every year, said Ron. It's got to be a boring life, hasn't it, being a hat? I suppose it's spent all year making up the next one. Professor McGonagall was now unrolling a large scroll of parchment. When I call out your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool. She told the first years, when the hat announced your house, you will go and sit at the appropriate table. Suddenly, step out. The boy walked forward, visible, trembling from head to foot, picked up the sorting hat, put it on, and sat down on the stool. Ravenclaw, shouted the hat. Stewart acridly took off the hat and hurried into a seat at the Ravenclaw's table, where everyone was applauding him. Harry caught a glimpse of Cho and the Ravenclaw seeker, cheering Stewart awkwardly as he sat down. For a fleeting second, Harry had a strange desire to join the Ravenclaw's table too. Bardock, Malone, Slytherin, the table on the other side of the hall, erupted with cheers. Harry could see Malfoy clapping as Black Dog joined the Slytherin. Harry wondered whether Black Dog knew that Slytherin house had turned out more dark witches and wizards than any other. Fred and George, his Malfoy, Black Dog as he sat down. Lansdale Ernell, Hufflepuff, Holden Owen, Hufflepuff, Granny Dennis, Tiny Dennis Granny streaked forward, tripping over Hagrid's moleskin just as Hagrid himself sidled into the hall through a door behind the teacher's table. About twice as tall as a normal man and at last 3 times as broad, Hagrid, with his long, wild, tangled black hair and a beard, looked slightly alarming. A misleading impression, for Harry, Ron and Hermione knew Hagrid to possess a very kind nature. He winked at them as he sat down at the end of the staff table and watched Danny's Gravy putting on the sorting hat. The rib at the brim opened widely. Gryffindor, the hat shouted. Hagrid clapped along with the Gryffindor as Danny's Gravy, beaming widely, took off the hat, placed it back to the stool and hurried over to join his brother. Colin, I fell in, he said cheerily, throwing himself into an empty seat. It was brilliant, and something in the water grabbed me and pushed me back in the boat. Cool, said Colin, just as excitedly. It was probably the giant squid, Dennis. Wow, said Dennis, as though nobody in their wildest dream could hope for more than being thrown into a storm tossed quadrant's deep lake and pushed out it again by a giant sea monster. Dennis, Dennis, see that boy down there, the one with the black hair and glasses. See him? Know who he is, Dennis? Harry looked away, staring very hard at the sorting hat. Now sorting Emma Donis, the sorting continued, boys and girls with varying degrees of fright on their faces moving one by one to the three-legged stool, the line dwelling slowly as Professor McGonagall passed the "Oh, hurry up," Ron moaned, massaging his stomach. "Now, Ron, the sorting much more important than food," said nearly headless Nick as madly Laura. "Become a Hufflepuff." "Course it is," of your dead, snapped Ron. "I do hope this year's batch of the Gryffindors are up to scratch," said nearly headless Nick, applauding as McNatalise joined the Gryffindor table. "You don't want to break our winning streak, do you, we?" Gryffindor had won the inter-house championship for the last 3 years in a row. Richard Graham, Slytherin, Dracola, Ravenclaw, and finally, with Vivek Kevin, Hufflepuff. The sorting ended. Professor McGonagall picked up the hat and the stool and carried them away. "About time," said Ron, seizing his knife and fork and looking expectantly at his golden plate. Professor Dumbledore had gotten to his feet. He was smiling around at the students, his arms open wide in welcome. "I have only 2 words to say to you," he told him, his deep voice echoing around the hall. "Tuck in." "Here, here," said Harry and Ron loudly, as the empty dishes filled magically before their eyes. Nearly headless Nick watched mournfully as Harry, Ron, and Hermione loaded their own plates. "Ah, it's beer," said Ron, with his mouth full of mashed potatoes. "You're lucky there is feast at all tonight, you know," said nearly headless Nick. "There was trouble in the kitchens earlier." "Why? What happened?" said Harry, through a sizable chunk of stick. "Pews, of course," said nearly headless Nick, shaking his head, which wobbled dangerously. He puffed his ruff a little higher up on his neck. "The usual argument, you know, he wanted to attend the feast." "Well, it's quite out of the question. You know what he's like, utterly uncivilized, can't see a plate of food without throwing it." We held a ghost council. The fat farrier was all for giving him the chance, but most wisely, in my opinion, the Bloody Baron put his foot down. The Bloody Baron was the Slytherin's coat, a giant and a silent spectre covered in a silver bloodstain. He was the only person at Hogwarts who could really control Pius. "Yeah, we thought Pius seemed hacked off about something," said Ron darkly. "So what did he do in kitchen?" "Oh, the usual," said nearly headless Nick, struggling, "wreaked havoc and mapped them, pots and pans everywhere. A swimming in soup terrified the house elves out of their wits." Clang! Hermione had knocked over her golden goblet. Pumpkin juice spread steadily over the tablecloth. Staring several feet of white like orange, Hermione paid no attention. "There are house elves here," she said, staring horror-struck at the nearly headless Nick. "Here at Hogwarts, certainly," said nearly headless Nick, looking surprised at her reaction. "The lads numbered in any dwelling in Britain, I believe, over 100. "I have never seen one," said Hermione. "Well, they hardly ever leave the kitchen by day, do they?" said nearly headless Nick. "They come out at night to do a bit of cleaning. See, to the fire and so on. I mean, you're not supposed to see them, are you? That's the mark of a good house elf, isn't it? That you don't know it's there." Hermione stared at him. "But they get paid," she said. "They get holidays, don't they? And sick leaves and pension and everything." Nearly headless Nick cluttered so much that his ruff slipped and his head chopped off, dangling on the inch or so of ghostly skin and muscle that still attached it to his neck. Sick leave and pension, he said, pushing his head back into his shoulder and securing it once more with the rough. House elf don't want sick leave and pensions. Hermione looked down at her hardly touched plate of food, then put her knife and fork down upon it and pushed it away from her. Oh, come on, Hermione, said Ron, accidentally spraying Harry with bits of Yorkshire pudding. Oops, sorry, Harry, he swallowed. You won't get them sick leaves by staring yourself. Slave labor, said Hermione, breathing hard through the nose. That's what made this dinner, slave labor, and she refused to eat another bite. Rain was still drumming heavily against the high dark glasses. Another clap of thunder struck the window and the stormy ceiling flashed, illuminating the golden plates as the remains of the first course vanished and were replaced instantly with pudding. Crackle tart, Hermione, said Ron deliberately, wafting its smell toward her. Spotting Dick, look, chocolate ganache. But Hermione gave him a look of remnant of Professor McGonagall that she gave up. When the pudding too had been demolished and the last crumb had faded off the plates, leaving them sparkling clean, Albus Dumbledore got to his feet again. Buzz of the chatter filling the hall ceased almost at once, so that only the howling wind and pounding rain could be heard. So, said Dumbledore, smiling around at all of them. Now, what we are all failed and wanted. I must once more ask you for your attention while I give out a few notice. Mr. Flynn, the caretaker, has asked me to tell you that the list of objects forbidden inside the castle has this year been extended to include screaming yawns, Pangus, freebies, and ever-bashing boomerang. The full list comprises some 437 items, I believe, and can be viewed in Mr. Flynn's office if everybody would like to check it. The corner of Dumbledore's mouth twitched. He continued, as ever I would like to remind you all that the forest on the ground is out of bound of students, as is the village of Hogsmeade to all below third year. It is also my painful duty to inform you that the inner house Quidditch Cup will not take place this year. What? Harry gasped. He looked around at Fred and George, his fellow members of the Quidditch team. They were mouthed soundlessly at Dumbledore's apparent to apply to speak. Dumbledore went on. This is due to an event that we will be starting in October and continuing throughout the school year, taking up much of the teacher's time and energy, but I am sure you will all enjoy it immensely. I have great pleasure in announcing that this year at Hogwarts. But that moment there was a deafening rumble of thunder and the doors of the great hall banged open. A man stood in the doorway, leaning upon a long staff shrouded in black travelling cloak. Every head in his great hall swiveled toward the stranger, suddenly brightly illuminating by the fork of lightning that flashed across the ceilings. He lowered his hood, shook out a long man of gizzard, dark grey hair, then began to walk up toward the teacher's table. A dull clock echoed through the hall. On every other step, he reached the end of the top table, turned light, and limped heavily toward Dumbledore. Another flash of lightning crossed the ceiling. Hermione gasped. The lightning had thrown the man's face into sharp relief, and it was a face unlike any Harry had ever seen. It looked as though it had been carved out of the weather wood by someone who had only the vaguest idea of what human faces are supposed to be look like, and was none too skilled with a chisel. Every inch of the skin seemed to be scared. The mouth looked like a diagonal gas, as the large chunk of the nose was missing, but it was the man's eye that made him frightened. One of them was small, dark, and beady. The other was large, round as a coin, and a vivid electric blue. The blue eye was movingly, ceaselessly, without blinking, and was rolling up, down, and from side to side, quite independently of the normal eye, and then it rolled right over, pointing into the back of the man's head, so that all they could see was witness. The stranger reached Dumbledore. He stretched out a hand that was as badly scared as his face, and Dumbledore shook it, muttering a word Harry couldn't hear. He seemed to be making some inquiry of a strange, who shook his head unsmilingly and replied in the undertone. Dumbledore nodded and gestured and man to the empty seat on his right-hand side. The stranger sat down, shook his mane and dark grey hair out of his face, pulled a plate of sausage toward him, raised it to what was left of his nose, and sniffed it. He then took a small knife out of his pocket, spared a sausage into the end, and ate and began to eat. His normal eye was fixed upon the sausage, but the blue eye was still darting restlessly around its socket, rattling in the hall. And the student, may I introduce our new defense against dark art teacher, said Dumbledore brightly into the silence. Professor Moody. It was usual for a new staff member to be greeted with applause, but none of the staff of the student club except Dumbledore and Hagrid, who both put their hands together and applauded, but the sound echoed immensely into the silence and they stopped fairly quickly. Everyone seemed to transfixed by Moody's bizarre appearance to the more than stare at him. Moody, Harry muttered to Ron, Mad-Eye Moody. The one your dad went to help this morning. Must be, said Ron in a low, awed voice. What happened to him? Hermione whispered. What happened to his face? Oh no, Ron whispered back, watching Moody with fascination. Moody seemed totally indifferent to his less than warm welcome, ignoring the judge of pumpkin juice in front of him. He reached again into his traveling cloak. He pulled out a hip flask and took as long draught from him as he lifted his arm to drink. His cloak had pulled a few inches from the ground, and Harry saw below the table several inches of carved wooden leg ending in a clawed foot. Dumbledore cleared his throat. As I was saying, he said, smiling at the sea of students before him, all of whom were still gazing transfixed at Mad-Eye Moody. We are to have the honor to hosting a very excited event over the coming month, an event that has not been held for over a century. It is my very great pleasure to inform you that the Triwizarding Tournament will be taking place at Hogwarts this year. You're joking, said Fred Weasley loudly. The tension that has filled the hall ever since Moody arrived suddenly broke. Nearly everyone laughed and Dumbledore chuckled appreciatively. I'm not joking, Mr. Weasley, he said, though now that you mention it, I did hear an excellent one over the summer about a troll hang and a leprechaun who all go into the bar. Professor McGonagall cleared her throat loudly. Oh, but maybe this is not the time. No, said Dumbledore. Where was I? Oh yes, the Triwizarding Tournament. Well, some of you will not know what Triwizarding Tournament involves, so I hope those who do not know will forgive me for giving a short explanation and allow their attention to wander freely. The Triwizarding Tournament was first established some 700 years ago as a friendly competition between three larger European schools of wizardry, Hogwarts, Buxbaton, and Durmstrang. A champion was selected to represent each school, and the three champions competed in three magical tasks. The school took it in turn to hoist the tournament once every 5 years, and it was generally agreed to be most excellent way of establishing ties between young witches and wizards of different nationalists until it that is the death roll mounted so high that the tournament was discontinued. Death roll, Hermione whispered, looking alarmed, but her anxiety did not seem to be shared by the majority of students in the hall. Many of them were whispering excitedly to one another, and Harry himself was far more interested in hearing about the tournament than in worrying about death that had happened 100 years ago. There have been several attempts over the centuries to reinstate the tournament, Dumbledore continued, none of which has been very successful. However, our own Department of International Magical Corporation and Magical Games and Sport have decided the time is ripe for another attempt. We have worked hard over the summer to ensure that this time no champion will find himself or herself in mortal danger. The head of Boxbottom and Dumbledore will be arriving with the shortlist contender in October, and the selection of the 3 champions will take place at Halloween. An impartial judge will decide which students are most worthy to compare for it. The Triwizard Cup, the glory of their school, and 1,000-gallon personal prize money. I'm going for it. Fred Weasley is down the table, his face lit with enthusiasm and prospect of such glory and reach. He was not the only person who seemed to have visualizing himself at Hogwarts champion. At every house table, Harry could see people either gazing rapidly at Dumbledore or else whispering fervently to their neighbors. But then Dumbledore spoke again, and the hall quaked once more. Eager through I know all of you will be to bring the Triwizard Cup at Hogwarts, he said. The head of the participating school, along with the Ministry of Magic, have agreed to impose an age restrictions on contender this year. Only students who are of age, that is to say 17 years or older, will be allowed to put forward their names for consideration. This Dumbledore raised his voice slightly, for several people had made noise of outrage at this word, and the Weasley twins were suddenly looking furiously. Is a measure we feel is necessary given that the tournament task will still be difficult and dangerous, whatever precautions we take, and it is highly unlikely that students below 16 and 17 years will be able to cope up with them. I will personally be ensuring that no underage student hoodwink or impartially judge into making them Hogwarts champion. His light blue eyes twinkle as they flit over Fred and George's Portia's face. I therefore beg you not to waste your time submitting yourself if you are under 17. The delegation from Boxbottom and Dumbledore will be arriving in October and remaining with us for a greater part of this year. I know that you will all extend every courtesy to our foreign guests while they are with us, and will give you wholehearted support to the Hogwarts champion when he or she is selected. And now it is late, and I know how important it is for you to all be alert and rested as you enter your lesson tomorrow morning. Bedtime, chop chop. Dumbledore sat down again and turned to talk to Mad-Eye Moody. There was a great scraping and banging as all the students got to their feet and swarmed toward Dumbledore into the entrance hall. They can't do that, said George Weasley, who was not joining the crowd moving toward the door, but was standing up and glaring at Dumbledore. We are 17 in April. Why can't we have a shot? They are not stopping me entering, and Fred stubbornly also scrolling at the top table. The champion will get to do all sort of stuff you had never been allowed to do normally. And 1,000 gallons prize money. Yeah, said Ron, a farewell look on his face. Yeah, 1,000 gallons. Come on, said Hermione. We'll be the only one left here. You don't move. That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Till then, see ya. Bye-bye.